What's good in the hood, YouTube? This is Crazy Samurai 71 here bringing another video. Today I'm bringing a video on Power Rangers Ninja Steel. This is regarding the 18th episode of the show and the last filler episode for the season. The next two episodes are the final episodes and they're both story-based. At least that's what's supposed to be said. 19 is supposed to be a lot more filler than story, but it is supposed to lead into some big story at the end. So as far as things go, this episode is called Abrakadanger, and it was a pretty good episode, actually the best of the 3 recent filler episodes, and I mean that because this episode was pretty decent. The last episode was alright, and then the episode before that was not that great, so progressively getting better. But as far as things go with this episode, it begins with the principal of their school getting a package in the mail for Preston. The principal goes to Preston, giving it to him, and it's in this special kind of case. And when the Rangers go to look at it, it says it's addressed from. It says it's from Princess Viera from the Lion Galaxy. So at that point, the Rangers know not to show it around in the school. But then we end up hearing a conversation that is really just a speech from Victor trying to mention that he's going to be playing in a tennis match again this year, because last year when he went up against the former opponent that he played, which was Haley, he completely defeated her, and he hopes to win again this year. What happens is that Monty actually shows clips of last year's game where Victor was doing amazing while Haley was doing terribly. Yeah, Haley wasn't a great tennis player. So then, when Victor asks if anyone wants to challenge him again this year, no one accepts, and then he thinks, I win by default. But then Haley, feeling annoyed at Victor for his attitude about things, decides to go up against him again. And then at that point, she wants to prepare. So then the Rangers go back to their base, and they end up discovering what is exactly in the case that Princess Viera sent them. In the case is the Lion Fire Star for the Lion Fire Zord, and also the changer that allows Brody to access the Lion Fire armor. So that's in there. Also, a wand and a spellbook are also in there, and a special communication device that they end up placing on the table, and suddenly a hologram appears showing Princess Viera as she talks to the Rangers and explains to them about the Lion Fire Zord Star, and also about the Lion Fire armor, but also the fact that she sent Preston this magic book and wand so he can practice these new spells, but she mentions to be warned that he has to go in order of the spells as they are listed in the book. So at that point, what ends up happening is that, he's excited about the book, he's skimming through the pages, and he really can't wait to get into it. Then we end up seeing Preston and Haley are practicing their own things. Haley's practicing tennis, Preston's practicing magic, and what Preston decides to do to help Haley is that he ends up using his spellbook, which the first spell is levitation, so he uses that to hit the ball back and forth with Haley so that he can practice levitation while she can practice tennis. Win-win situation right there, right? So then the other Rangers come over, and also Mick, and he ends up skimming through the pages, mentioning all sorts of different spells like color change and hair growth and a whole bunch of different things. And one spell that he finds, which I think is like the 6th spell in the book, is invisibility. So he wants to use it on something. And the Ranger said, be careful with that. You're going ahead of yourself. You're supposed to go in order, like Princess Viera said. And so he's like, oh, no big deal. I'll just use it on something small. So the first thing that he thinks of, oh, I have a tennis ball. I'm going to use it on that. Well, when he tries to use it, since he hasn't learned the previous spells, he doesn't really know how to do it so well. So when he attempts it, he actually drops the ball and ends up shooting the spell at Haley, turning her invisible. So then at that point the question is, what are they going to do? Haley's supposed to be in a game. So they decide then that they have to find a way to cover her up so that she can be in the game. So they end up giving her sweatpants and a whole bunch of other things, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But the point is that we then end up seeing Preston try to use the undo spell, which is the last spell in the book, which again, he hasn't done any other spells, and he's jumping all the way ahead to the last spell, which he's not supposed to do, and so he can't undo the spell. So then we end up seeing Abrakadanger appear on the Galaxy Warrior Dome. He shows up and does a spell which Cosmo Royale dodges, but then 2 Kudabots are turned into balloons. He then pops the 2 of them, and Galvanox, from his base of command, basically says, I think that Abrakadanger could be very useful to us, and he laughs with Madamodius. So then at that point we end up seeing the Rangers at the tennis game, and we see that Victor is ready, and Haley is dressed in sweatpants, a sweatshirt, and also a welding mask. Who gave her the welding mask? Well, Mick, of course. And that's because, that's a way for them to make it like she has a face, because she's invisible. So how are they supposed to make it clear that she has a face if she doesn't have something covering it? So at that point, the Rangers and Haley ends up going up against Victor, and Victor ends up swinging some crazy powerful strikes across the tennis court, and at first it like burns through the metal fence that's behind Haley, and then another swing of the racket breaks her racket, and then I believe it's Calvin who gives her a new one, and then at that point when he goes to swing again, this time what happens is that suddenly the swing ends up going towards towards her face, but when she tries to lean back dodging it, she does, but suddenly the welding mask falls off and it shows that she has no face. So then at that point the principal and everyone else is looking like, what's going on here? Preston appears out of smoke and says ta-da, just to try to make it out like he did a magic trick on her. And then at that point the principal disqualifies her because Preston was using magic to help her out, even though really it wasn't really helping her. So the point then is that Victor is left the only one standing, so he's at first thought, he's going to win his 50th trophy, which is a thing that he's been saying throughout the show, that he's been trying to win his 50th trophy. And suddenly when he goes to accept it, he shakes hands with the principal, and the arm comes off that he's shaking hands with. Turns out it's a prosthetic arm, and this arm has insane launching power, which is why he was able to do these crazy powerful attacks with the tennis racket. So with the tennis racket to during the game. So then at that point what ends up happening is that they decide to postpone the game to the next day, since they both cheated, and the next day they have to play fair, otherwise it just won't, otherwise no one wins. So at that point, Haley isn't happy with the current situation. She wants to be visible again, and she's just upset. So she ends up heading back to the base, and in the meantime the Rangers end up going on, the other Rangers go elsewhere to talk to Preston about trying to learn the spell to undo the invisibility. So what ends up happening is that suddenly we end up seeing Abrakadanger appear, and he is with some and he ends up doing a whole bunch of different attacks against the Rangers, using spells, whether it be barrier spells, deflection spells, you name it. And then at one point when they're fighting, Levi tries to do an attack, and then he's sent across the country. Then what happens is he ends up contacting the Rangers on his ninja comm to tell them that he was sent across the country and that he's going to try his best to get back as soon as possible. So they say, all right. And he then realizes, what am I doing? Why would I walk? Let me summon my Zord so that it can bring me back over. So he ends up doing that and traveling back to where he needs to be. But he's not shown for quite some time in the episode. So we then end up seeing the Rangers fighting. At one point, all the Rangers except for Preston that are there, which means it's really Sarah, Brody, and Calvin, are turned into random toy objects, and then suddenly Preston is left alone, where Abrakadanger is going to use a spell on him. But then Haley, since she's invisible, appears behind Abrakadanger and drops a pot on his head, knocking him out. His staff is put away and it vanishes from him, so then he has to go looking for it. And in the meantime, Preston and Haley pick up their friends and bring them back to the base, since they're random objects like toys and stuff. So then back at the base, Mick, Haley, and Preston are talking about different things and about how Haley really practiced all year to get really good at tennis. And the thing is that she worked hard, she really got good at it. And then Mick tries to create an analogy mentioning the fact of how she didn't cut corners and everything, and how Preston, on the other hand, has been doing that. Rather than going in order, he has been jumping all around in the spell book. And if he did things the proper way, then this wouldn't have happened and things would have been much better. So at that point, Preston realizes Mick's wise words are true, and he ends up, and at that point Preston says that he is going to spend as much time as he can quickly learning all the spells in the book. So he ends up learning every single one of the spells, which is only 10 spells, but it's still important. So he'll use ones like levitation, color change, you name it. He does all. He does like foods, a food one. A whole bunch of different things are used overall, and then he finally comes to the final spell, which is the undo spell. When he does it this time, it works. Haley turns back to herself, and so do the other Rangers. At that point, they are grateful for what they were able to accomplish, and then what happens is that the Rangers return to fight Abrakadanger. This time he's accompanied by some Kudabots, so the Rangers end up having to deal with them and him, but they're kind of not really thought much of this episode. Like, they kind of are seen, but they don't do much. In the meantime, what ends up happening is that the Rangers actually end up doing some pretty cool attacks, and at one point Preston and Brody team up to do a finishing move that results in Brody doing a finisher that leads to him being turned into a dragon and then blowing some fire out of his mouth and destroying Abrakadanger. So then he is gigantified, and at that point what happens is that the Rangers summon their Megazord. But it's interesting because they actually use the Ninja Steel Megazord Dragon formation, which we haven't seen, I believe, since the second episode. And again, it's not a very regular formation used in the show at all. In the Japanese show, they almost never used it. So the fact that they're using it again, I mean, I believe they used it a few times in the Japanese show, but it makes sense that like this is only the second time that we're seeing it. So as far as things go, they end up using that, and at one point Abrakadanger manages to put out of commission the Ninja Steel Megazord and Dragon formation, and at that point Levi finally returns with the Bull Rider Zord and the Robo Rider Zord, and he ends up fighting Abrakadanger with the the Robo Rider Zord, and eventually he ends up getting it so that the Ninja Steel Dragon formation is reactivated, and they still have it again. The Rangers end up using the finishing move with that formation, and then they end up switching over to the Bull Rider Megazord, which Levi activates, but they just move right over. They don't even use the Dragon formation. They just jump across, which seems kind of silly because you would think that if you already have the Dragon formation out, why don't you do both and do a finishing move? But I guess that probably also has to do with the Japanese show not having that, even though they really should have. But anyway, overall, I would say that's fine. So then at that point, after they destroy Abrakadanger, we end up seeing the tennis match against Victor. Haley manages to completely defeat Victor. Every single point she wins. He doesn't win a single point. And in the end, she gets the trophy while he gets the second place ribbon. The episode ends, and that's about it. So as far as things go, pretty decent episode. Not the most crazy one, but it is important because there is one moment in it that is significant overall, which is that they finally get the Lion Fire Zord Star and also the the Lion Fire armor changing device, which we hadn't, which as you might remember, I believe it was episode 15. She ended up bringing that back to the Lion Galaxy, and she said, whenever you need the Lion Zord, just call for me. And the thing is that they never did that, and yet they didn't have the Lion Fire Zord or anything in there available to them. So it sort of seemed like it was just a way for them to make it so that no one would question why they weren't using the Lion Fire Zord or the Lion Fire armor. That was kind of their way to get away with that, which seems a bit silly, but whatever. But I'll tell you this much right now, I already know that we'll definitely be seeing it probably, if not the next episode, definitely during the finale for the season. So that's about it for me. 2 more episodes until Ninja Steel ends, and then we have to wait till probably late January. Early February is probably the latest it would be, but more likely than not, like late January would be when Power Rangers Super Ninja Steel starts airing. So I'd love to know your guys' opinions. Did you guys enjoy this episode? Are you looking forward to the last 2 episodes of the show? Please remember to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. So until then, guys, I'm Crazy Samurai 71, and goodbye, guys.